boring bar system, and this is a copy, my version of a copy of one that's commercially made that was recently actually bought by Carter. The guy made them, and I know they're not available but from him anymore, but Carter, the company that makes this and a bunch of other things, bought him out, and they manufacture these. And I just looked at them on the Carter website. It's about $1,000 worth with this rest and the boring bar. And I may have, I don't know, $100 in it or something. So makes it easy for me. But it works great. This is an 1.5 inch solid steel. It's about a 50-pound piece, so it doesn't move very much. And it's got the conveyor rollers, so this just moves up and down really easily. And this allows me to get deeper in the bases, obviously. I've got a smaller one, a little articulated system that will allow me to do smaller hollow forms. It's more versatile. You can get in deeper. You can move it easier. It's a lot lighter, but you can't get in very deep. So this allows me to get deep and do bigger bases. And I think on the Carter site, they said you could go up to 34 inches deep. I haven't gone that deep yet, but that's pretty neat. So anyway, this is my setup. I've got a lot of different tips, and I've kind of gotten into just making my own tools. And you can do a lot of things with a grinder and a welder and some metal. So anyway, a lot of these are tools that I've made. I use high-speed steel scrapers, and I use the Hunter tools. I really like those. Those are carbide that last a long time, and they're pretty aggressive and cut a lot of wood out. So what I thought I would do is I got a vase kind of roughed out, and I drilled through the center of it, and I use one of the various different options. I've been trying to use an auger bit, and I realized I found out that auger bits are really sharp, and if they start turning with your piece, you don't grab it because they're sharp. So anyway, the auger is very, very aggressive, and I haven't had a great deal of luck with it going in grain because it seems to catch where the pith is, and they move. So anyway, I'm kind of exploring on the best way to do that. But anyway, I've got this center drilled out, and then I hollowed that out a little bit, and I thought what I would do is at least you can see this in motion, and I'll kind of hollow this out a little bit. But I thought, you're not going to be able to see a whole bunch, and the tool's going to be down in there, and it's just going to sit here for an hour, and I'll move this thing back and forth. So I thought what I would do would be do some of this, and then switch over to a different piece that's more, we could keep it open, and we can see kind of what the tool's doing, which I thought would be a little bit more interesting to be able to see what the tool's doing. And if somebody wants to come up and kind of just use one of the tools, or we can change tips. If somebody wants to do that on their own and see what it's like, they're welcome to.
How do you do wall thickness with that, or how do you kind of know where you are?
Good question. I've got a laser that sits here.
Oh, okay.
So I can adjust this laser out. Most of you are familiar with using lasers for that. Shine it right on the tip. And what I didn't bring, there's another little bar here that I apparently forgot. So anyway, it would sit here. I've got another bar here to kind of support it. And you can just shine that right on the tip. And what I do is if I want to do a 1/2 inch wall, I'll just move it a 1/2 inch away from the end of the tip. And then as the laser falls off the piece, you know that's how thick you are. It's just learning to trust that that's right, because it takes a while, and you stop and you try to measure the thickness and try to figure out a tool that'll reach in there, and you finally realize, you know, that's probably pretty accurate. So I use the laser to, when I'm getting thinner like that. I won't need it for this, but a lot of times I'll have it on there, even if I'm not trying to get, I'm not worried that I'm going to go through the wall, just because it lets me see what I'm doing and know where I am. It just is. Otherwise, everything's just totally blind and it gets boring. So if you can at least watch your progress and see where you are, you're not worried about going to the side, but you can just see your progress.
Can you feel it as you're going through?
You can feel it.
Can I know if something that big, if it took all the filling out of it?
Doesn't take it all out, but it's different than the smaller one, this articulated piece that goes, it's just got a 2 Morse taper that goes into the tailstock. You know, this thing is just a lot more versatile, and you can feel, this takes a lot of the feel away from the hand hollowing.
Right.
But there's less feel with this. You're right, there's definitely less feel, but you can still feel it. It's just, you kind of have to pay attention because it takes a lot of it out.
Yeah.
I do think it's a good idea, before anybody does one of these hollowing systems, is to hand hollow some, because you just get a feel for it. And I think if you go straight to something like this, you just never get that feel for hollowing. I think that it helps to get that feel for hollowing a little bit.
There's no substitute for experience. How many walls have you gone through down through the years to develop the level of skill that you have now?
A couple.
A couple? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I've broken tool tips. I've done all of that.
Sure, because once it goes through and that thing's spinning, the amount of force on the end of that tool is just fantastic.
It's amazing to see
Sure.
the force and how quickly a forceable bit will twist. The other thing that this kind of relates to that, I kind of was cocky. I know that the commercial one has this top brace on top of it. And I thought, well, that's kind of overdone. Because in order for that tip to be pushed down hard enough to tip this up, there's no way. Well, recently this thing jumped.
Yes, there is a way.
So this is a new addition. I had to kind of put this piece on there. So that's sort of new. But anyway, that's just talking about the torque and what really happens. If you be able to push this piece down and tip that, a lot of torque.
Eric, what have you got on the steady rest? You got tape on there trying to protect it?
Yeah, it's just to protect the wood a little bit. It still bruises it
Okay.
some, but it's just my way of trying to protect it.
It's just what kind
Painter's
of tape
tape.
is it?
Just painter's tape.
Okay.
I've used duct tape.
I've
you're
heard
gonna go
people
back
leaving
over-
it a little thicker in there and then peeling it back because of the bruising. and all
Right,
that.
and that's the way this guy I forget his name, the guy that developed this, does these great big bases, and he lives at about a 1/4 inch raised up right there, because it does bruise it some. When I'm done with this, I'll go back over the outside with just a real light touch and then sand it. So I've not had any of that bruising stay, but it's just an attempt to protect it a little bit.
Eric, is the plastic wrap because that's green?
Yes. And I will often do that when I'm doing it myself anyway, just because it's just spinning and spinning and it starts drying. But I kind of try to get some of this prepared over this past week. So this has been sitting in this plastic for a week, and I just thought it would keep it from splitting as much as possible. I don't let it dry in that over time just because it gets moldy, but it's just kind of just for this purpose. But I'll wrap it overnight if I'm not done, or I'll even wrap it when I'm hollowing the inside just because it slows the drying some.
Eric, if you want us to really see what you're doing inside there, I've seen on videos where they just cut a third of the wall away, take over
I thought of that. You know, Jimmy Clues does that, or Mahoney does that on one of his pieces.
Yeah, Mahoney.
Yeah.
I've seen that one.
And
You can drill offset holes in it too, I've done that, where you can see,
oh, is that right?
go around it and drill your offset holes where you can see
You
inside.
know, when you've gotten there, yeah. See it. Or if you've got a big inclusion where the bark's all peeled out, you can see the tool, which is really kind of cool. When you've got holes in your pieces, you can see the tool,
Yeah, you can see
inside.
the tool when it's running.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if we had, a good camera system, we could stick a camera up in there.
This was all free.
And
When you put the original hole in there, do you turn these things in stages in order to reach an equilibrium of the moisture in the wood, or you just go right through it?
Just go right through it, yeah. This is stages just because it takes a while. But I've got 2 hours probably on the outside. I've got probably another hour on the inside. And so I just wanted to get prepared for this, so otherwise I would have just gone straight through and, you know, I probably wouldn't finish it in a day just because I've got a real job. So, but I would wrap it up and work on it again the next night, but it's only because of my schedule, otherwise you can go straight through. And then it's a matter of, do you want to turn it wet to dry, like a bowl, or do you want to turn it, let it, and rough turn it, let it dry over a period of time and then return it. And I've done both for vases. I've got both vases wrapped up drying, and I've done some vases that I just went all the way through to dry, or to finish, and it was still wet and just let it do what it's going to do, and they move a little bit. The vases I usually rough turn and then let them dry over time and return them.
Is that a one piece? Excuse me. Is that a one piece or a segment?
It's one piece. This is walnut, and it's just the pith is in the center, so this is just a log that I've trimmed down. And it's got
The pith in the center?
It's right through the middle of it, or roughly through the middle of it. Yeah.
What size hole do you drill to start with? Is that the size hole you drill?
No, I'll use at least an inch. I've tried a half-inch. I've got a long half-inch drill, just a regular drill bit, which is okay. But if that doesn't stay completely centered, and then you try to hollow it, you've got this piece, little thing, you know, spinning. So the bigger the hole within reason, the easier it is then to go in and hollow it. So I'll at least do an inch if I can do. I think I used an 1 3/4 this morning on a vase Forstner bit, and which worked pretty well. This auger bit I got is an inch, which I thought would probably be good enough. It's just that thing's eating me alive, so I haven't figured that one out yet. But at least an inch. If I can do an 1 3/4 Forstner, I will. It's just that it gives you. It's hard to turn the center piece out with this boring bar because it has to be perfectly centered. And if it's a little high or a little low, it's just really hard to get that center piece out. So that's part of the reason for drilling that original hole, is you're not dealing with that very center piece anymore.
Do you drill all the way through?
I drill it to my final depth, or rough
Final depth.
Yeah.
Well, the Forstner, I would think that because of the spur on the end, the Forstner tracks properly. I've had that same problem, trying to drill deep holes, and a spiral, a regular spiral bit will start doing whatever it feels like doing as it gets on down in there further.
Right.
And so, but the Forstner and an auger with that spur on the end is gonna track true.
Yeah.
The trouble, and just like, I've had that experience too. With an auger, you have to almost go hand turn, and I don't know whether you get your lathe down that slow.
Yeah, it'll pull. I can't stop the momentum of that auger myself. I have to lock the rest down where I've got my bit into it. I've got to stop it with the locking my rest down, because I can't physically stop it. It's got that momentum.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really probably not made to be used this way.
So you got the screw on the end of it,
It's got that screw on the end.
so it's pulling itself in.
Yeah.
So it's pulling
And it's-
itself in,
and
and
it's-
Try grinding that off.
This thing is, I've thought of that. This thing is heavy duty, and it drilled way off center. I mean, it just went. It's not bent. I mean, it's just unbelievable what it's done.
I go back to the Forstner.
That's I went back to Forstner today. Man. All right, we'll get this thing going. Maybe. Maybe I'll turn it on. Speed-wise, kind of just whatever's comfortable. This is 7, this is 800. Found out this morning that these carbide tips, this is one of those hunter tool bits that, carbide really, it chips really easily. Because I was carrying this thing around and I had the tip on it, and I hit that on the lathe and it just chipped a piece off of that tool bit. See this, the effort to move this thing and when you start getting a lot of savings in there, I can kind of feel it bouncing. It's even hard to blow these out sometimes. Little hollow forms or things, I'll blow them out with
I use a
blower.
shop vac.
Yeah, I've got a little vacuum that I can stick down in there and it sucks it right out.
Is this level?
It may not be. It's supposed to be, but I didn't measure it.
Okay.
But yeah, it's supposed to be roughly level.
It is roughly low.
I think it's roughly level. It's not going anywhere.
So you use that boring system on your Nova?
Yes. All the time. You mean you were thinking about horsepower or whatever?
Well, I got Nova too. I was just curious. Yeah.
It works fine. Yeah. Much better than this one. Piece of junk.
No, I got a piece of junk.
Sometimes when I get that grinding like that's obviously I need to tighten the tool rest. We had to kind of work on this tool rest because it was. I think it works for the spindles, but it didn't work for this. We had to raise it up, so I think there's a little give in the tool rest. Or I might even change to a different tip. It's just when we're getting further away from the headstock, it wants to bounce a little bit. Sometimes a different tool will help that. I'm pretty far over the tool rest with that tip. Yeah, so I'm pretty much down to the bottom. And it's really not, it's not bouncing.
Now, did you make this whole system yourself?
I did. I didn't make the conveyor belt roller. But it's just,
Yeah, well,
wear tubing. And
as far as I do that all the time too, the reason you made your own is because the commercial one was just too damn much money.
yeah.
That's the reason. So you do what you have to do.
Well, and I think this serves my purposes fine.
Sure.
I made a tool rest or a steady that it works okay, but boy, this is sweet. There's a point where sometimes these commercial pieces are superior.
Well, I made one of those steadies. I turn shafts for cane so I can carve them, whittle them.
Yeah.
And at the time, since then, they've come out with ones that are made out of cast iron for a small lathe that cost you less than $50, but the ones I was seeing was 150, 200, so on and so forth. So I made mine, and what I did is I went to found at a garage sale a pair of inline skates for $1.
Yep.
Took the wheels off those inline skates, and I've got enough to make 2.5 of
Yep.
those things.
That's what I used for mine.
And when you're trying to carve something that, or turn something that is approximately 40 inches long, and when you get in the center of it, it doesn't take much for that thing to start doing this, and then you break them every time, but you've got to steady
You
rest.
definitely need the steady
When you put
rest.
it in the middle, like you don't have any problem.
I'm gonna switch over to this other piece where you can kind of just see what the tip's doing.